Today we'll be presenting a very powerful feature in SPM, which is advanced costs. This feature is intended to be used with SPM to offer a straightforward calculation of costs associated with samples submitted to the laboratory for analysis. So, in order to tackle this feature, the agenda for today will consist of the following. We're going to be talking about advanced costs in SPM, defining and becoming more familiar about what those mean. Also, we're going to show how we can enter advanced cost data into database. We're going to talk about advanced cost parameters in database again. Then we're going to explore the advanced cost form that we find in SPM. And last but not the least, we're going to explore the advanced costs in laboratory contracts, because once that we do that, all the data that we've been previously entering in database and which is defining the advanced costs parameters is going to be calculated, and running that through laboratory contracts and through SPM task, we actually can populate some DT tables in database with samples for with cost for the samples that we are designing. So the advanced cost feature, as I was pointing out before, it's used for entering data for advanced cost calculations. So we do have some required data input, and that would be the cluster of samples that represent different ranges of costs, the numbers of samples in each of those ranges, in each of those clusters. Also, the discount factors that are depending on samples that are in a cluster, the turnaround time, the report level, and the number of samples. So talking about the discount factors, that these are depending on the samples in a cluster. And through these discount factors, we can actually customize an in-depth consideration given to discount factors, which will allow for a variety of scenarios which are characteristic to laboratory rules for contracts. So this feature has more than 10 discount factors. I'm going to enumerate a few of them here. Nevertheless, they might not make too much sense right now, but however, we're going to become more familiar as we're progressing with this presentation. So some of the discount factors that we have take into account the standard prices per sample. Another one is the minimum number of samples which are allowed to have discounts based on the sample volume. Also, another discount factor is the price of the sample with the sample volume discount, and the maximum quantity of analytes per sample which don't have any extra costs. And then I was saying we actually have more than that. We're going to explore them in more depth as we're progressing. So how can we enter advanced cost data? Advanced cost data can be entered in two ways. The most comprehensive way is by using an EDD file and SPM format in EQuIS that is being pushed through EDP. And also we can actually use the advanced cost form in SPM, and we're going to explore both of them. However, I would say that using an EDD file and SPM format allows for entering more information, respectively those discount factors, to a much higher complexity that would be able just using the advanced cost form in SPM. And once that we have this data set up and it's being pushed in a database and it goes in the appropriate tables, which we're going to explore soon enough, we need to use that data to actually calculate the cost depending on the contracts that we're setting up. Contracts that can be set up for samples that are set up either as analyzed by MAGS or by analyte itself. So using contracts and tasks in SPM actually helps to calculate those costs that we're talking about and we're looking for. So entering advanced cost parameters in EQuIS database. These advanced cost parameters can be uploaded to database using the SPM format, and the SPM format we find it in the Airsoft SPM format SPM directory, and that's where it's located by default. And also, if you would like to play a little bit with this feature after our presentation, you can also find in the same folder an example EDD that's being named SPM sample EDD. And you're going to find a little bit of information there about all these factors that we're talking about. So, as I was saying, this EDD that we can use as a sample has different tabs. And these tabs are presented here. For example, we have a tab for RT-SPM cost calculation, and we're going to use cost calculation code in this one. Then the next tab is RT-SPM cost calculation mag per mag, and we're going to use cost cal code, cost type, method analyte group as well, associated with CASRN. And then also we have the SPM container. And I would pause here a little bit, and I would actually like to bring up the EDD itself, just to explore a little bit. So this is how the EDD that it's giving as an example, it looks. I also populated a little bit more information based on my own exercising. But anyway, as I was saying before, these are the parameters that we're going to populate in database. So going back to the presentation, we have few examples of advanced cost discounts factors. And if you do remember that they were here, all of these are discount factors that maybe do not really make at the beginning too much sense, but actually if we examine those, are pretty easy to understand. So for example, for the base is a standard price per sample. Then the base number of samples is the minimum number of samples to be allowed to have discount based on sample volume. The base discount is the price of the sample with the sample volume discount. And base number of samples 2, for example, it's the minimum number of samples to be allowed to have an additional discount, and so forth. So what I'm trying to say here is that it is actually, once that we understand how this works, is really pretty easy. Arithmetics are really easy behind that. So once that we know what we want, once that we know the rules of the lab and we know how to populate this, it's going to be pretty easy to understand how those prices, the final costs, are being generated eventually. So these are some of the discount factors just listed here that I was talking just a couple of minutes ago. So where are these going? Assuming that we're going to use the SPM format file and then we're going to push the data through database, we're going to have that pushed into RT-SPM cost calc and RT-SPM cost calc mag. And as we can see there, we have the cost calc code. Also, we have the cost calc code here, the cost type of the method analyte group, and some other information that we're going to need when we calculate our costs. So again, that information goes in database into these two tables, which are fundamental tables for the cost, advanced cost feature. So the advanced cost setting as well, if we look at the RT-SPM cost calc, we include a series of other factors that also allow us a higher customization about what happens with the QA/QC samples. For example, do you want to include the QA/QC samples? Do you want to count the QA/QC samples? Do you want to actually evaluate the cost of QA/QC samples? So all of these also can be configured by selecting yes or no in these tables. And if we choose not to populate anything here, then there is a null option, which also can be set up in EST configuration. And just to explore more about that, we have very comprehensive help files that you can use and actually can guide yourself through how to configure this selection of these QA/QC samples. So now we're going to be talking about entering data in the advanced costs form. So basically the advanced cost form, which can be found in SPM and I'm going to explore, is used for entering data for these advanced cost calculations. And we are dealing with costs per cluster of samples, which include the discount depending on the sample's number, turnaround time, report level, and number of samples. And just to make a little bit more sense of that, I would just jump here. So this is what we get when we access the advanced costs form in SPM. And basically what we're doing, we're going to select a lab, and that for that specific lab, we're going to look at the mags that were defined, and selecting a certain mag, for example, is going to be populated here. Once that we have the here we have the perk daughters, let's say. So once that we have the perk daughters populated here, we are presented with several ways of populating this row. So in this row, we're going to address issues as turnaround time, report level, and number of samples. So with the number of samples, we're going to define the clusters of samples that are going to benefit from a certain point. For example, for the 10 samples, we're going to have a $15 cost per sample. Then if we increase the number, 20, we're going to have a decreased price, and so forth. So these fields allow us to include two clusters of prices, and then whatever is the third, then is going to be bigger than the last one. We also can assign turnaround time factors to the point where we can see here, if we have a turnaround which is 28 days, then we are going to multiply our cost with 1, which means it's the usual cost. As this turnaround time, TAT, gets shorter and shorter, obviously the price is going to go higher and higher, and that's why how these multiplier factors actually are increasing to turnaround time as per how short that is. The other thing that we have here as well is the report level. So the report level defines, as we can see here, it's a multiplier of 1, 2 a multiplier of 2, and so forth. So we can define this. The basic rule of the report level is that actually the level 1 is the lowest, and that's what we multiply by 1. And let's say that for the lowest level, the lab is going to give us just samples. For a higher sophistication of the report level, for example, for level 2, we're going to have samples and a batch of QA/QC. And let's assume that for the 3, which is the highest in this case, we have additional QC, we have calibration data, instrument logs, and so forth. So that's what this is the meaning of this report level tab. So once that we do that and everything gets populated here, we're going to click save, and the data goes in the SPM cost calc mag. So this is where it is going to show. Again, we chose the perk daughters. So we show the perk daughters at mag as cost type mag. And then we can see that we have the base price, then we have the base number of samples, which obviously matches number A here. We have the base discount for the next cluster for 20 samples, which is number 20 here and $12 here, and so forth. What we don't really have here, and we see does not get populated with this form, we don't really have the other additional discount factors. So that's why I was saying that for more in depth of this feature, it's preferable to actually populate the database through an EDD that we create beforehand. As I was mentioning before, that's about pushing the data into database. Now we have to do something with those factors that we defined and those numbers of samples, and we want to actually calculate some costs to know how much is that going to cost us if we send that to the lab. So in order to do that, we can calculate advanced costs in the lab contracts per mag or at the analyte level. So assuming that this is the contract piece in SPM, we're going to have to create method analyze group. And again, I'm going to go later to SPM and I'm going to look at it more in depth. So I did give them some very descriptive numbers just for presenting purposes, assuming that this is entry level. So let's say I chose here a discount for a mag type, and I have 6 analytes as VOCs in this mag. So basically, the way it's going to show is going to show the VOCs for the contract mag name the way I named it. And then if we go to the right-hand side and we click on the cost and click advanced, we're going to have the cost cal code, and that has been defined before when we enter the data in the database. We had the cost type, which was assigned by MAG, and we left the report level empty for now. But anyway, these were the analytes that we chose to group together as a MAG. So once that we do that, what happens is that we create this information, and this information is going to be pushed into the RT SPM cost calc and RT SPM cost calc MAG. So the information gets registered into database. So now that we have that, we're going to proceed further, and we're going to try to see how much, as I was saying, how much a sample would actually cost. So in order to do that, we'll be going in SPM, and we're going to plan a task. And I did create a very simple task. There is just one recurrence in this task, and it's just one sample. And for that sample, I assigned a contract MAG, which talks about the discount for a MAG type for 6 analytes in VOCs. And then once that I do that, I save the task. And it's essential actually to schedule the task. So once that I schedule the task in SPM, the database is automatically populating in a table, which is DT SPM schedule sample cost. And that is going to give us the cost for that sample. The way it looks here, if we look at this delineation here, we see that we have the 6 analytes that go in the VOCs as a MAG. And the price is listed just for one, which means that this price actually has all the 6 analytes that are here. So that's why these ones are 0, basically summed up. They were going to give us this number here. So how is this being done behind the scenes? Just to understand a little bit, because it is actually really easy. Let's check if actually that made sense what we had here. If this price of 319.55, it's actually something that makes sense. Okay, so we do have one sample, and that sample has 6 analytes, the VOCs. The base, it's defined as $200. So this is a standard price per sample. However, the base number of analytes is 2. According to our contract. That means that the maximum quantity of analytes per sample with no extra cost is only 2. So that means that I have 6. So for 2 of them, I'm only going to pay the usual price. Now, the extra analyte cost is $49.86. That means that this is the cost of each extra analyte that exceeds the base number of analytes. So that means that the base number is 2. So we have 4 more, because we have 6 analytes. We have 4 more that exceed that base number of analytes. However, we also have another discount factor, which is the overall number of analytes, which is 5. So what that means is that the minimum number of analytes which are allowed to have discounts are 5. Well, if we had 6 analytes and we already had 2 as base, we only have 4 as extra analytes. That means that we're below this number of 5. So the way we calculate, we add the base of 200, and we're going to add 4 times for each of the next 4 samples this price of the extra analyte cost. And then we also have a discount percent, because what we have here, it says discount percent of 20%. It's applied. It's a percent of discount per analyte for a sample that exceeded the overall number of analytes. And we did exceed the overall number of analytes, because that's 2. That means that to this price here, we apply a 20% discount, which means 0.8. And then we're going to get this price. So ta-da, it's done. So that's really nothing complicated behind that. So just to show how that works, I will launch SPM. And again, I would go, so I created this before just for the sake of the demonstration, obviously to make sure that nothing happens. So I went to Tutor Lab, and as I was saying before, I created several contracts. One of the contracts was a discount a MAG with 6 analytes for 6 VOCs. I created a contract with mag as well, mag type, but just with one analyte, one VOC. And then I created a discount contract for analyte type that has 2 priority metals. So opening each one of them just to explore a little bit. So we did have the discount mag for the 6 VOCs as a mag. Cost type is mag. We already defined the price list as a cost calc code. And then we have all the elements here. The other ones were, as I was saying, discount mag just for one. So we just chose one. And then if in this case, we should actually get the actual price, and we're going to see if that's true because we have just one analyte. However, this is still defined as a mag. It's not defined as an analyte. And as I was saying, last but not the least, because you want to explore everything, we defined this discount for analytes for 2 priority metals. We have the same cost calc code as I defined before in database. And also this time we're going to choose a cost type as being analyte. So that being done, the next thing that we can do, and I'll be closing this, we actually have to assign some tasks. So I did assign some kind of silly tasks here, but just to make sure that we really put everything in conjunction. So it's really easy to understand again for demonstration purposes. So let's say I've created a task that for discount for mag type for 6 VOCs. So basically what this task is going to comprise, we didn't really bother to anything else here because the purpose of this demonstration is to talk about costs, right? So we're going to set up just one time recurrence preview. And then if we look at the samples, we assign the samples that it's assigned to tutor lab and to the contract mag name disc mag with 6 VOCs as analytes, but as mag type. So the same rationale apply to the other tasks. For this one, we applied, for one recurrence, we applied a sample that's basically discount mag type 1 VOC. And then, last but not the least, we explored a little bit to see what would happen if we have an analyte type of discount. So for this one, for the same fact of having just one recurrence, we had one sample. And for that sample, we have the tutor lab discount analytes where we actually chose 2 priority metals as analytes. So once that happens, just to make the magic happen and actually having some cost calculated is really, really easy. What we do, we go to the schedule task, we schedule the tasks, sorry, so I already scheduled them. And then going to the scheduled tasks, we check that those has been scheduled. And assuming that I already performed this, and I did, going to the database, we're going to have the same, the following information. For the SPM cost calc, we're going to have cost calc code, which is our price list. And also the other parameters here, that if we want to talk about QA/QC, it's something that, again, that we can set up while we're here. The SPM cost calc calculation, we see for the price list, we have the mags, the cost type mags, and for mags, I have the group code, the VOCs, and all the VOCs have a price of $200 per base, but also we have some discounts here. We have base number of samples for the second part of discounts and so forth, extra analyte costs and so forth. We also have some information about the analytes for cost type as an analyte, and that's the priority metals that I was populating the database with, just to make sure that I have something to calculate when I run SPM. So assuming that we already created the contracts, we created the tasks, we scheduled the task, the DT-SPM schedule sample cost is going to be populated automatically. And it's going to be populating as follows. It's going to have here, for example, if we see here what I was pointing out before during the presentation. So for this scheduled task code, we have 6 analytes, and all of them are grouped together. These ones are going to show 0, but this one actually comprises the cost for the entire sample. For the one that we only had one analyte, obviously we're going to have a price of $200. As for this one, that's has two different analytes taken separate, they're going to have these prices, and the price of the sample itself is going to be $49 and something. So that's how it's calculated. The other thing I think I would like to check here. Oh, that's going to go a little bit later. I would like to go back and look at the advanced cost manager. I'm not really going to play too much around with it, but just to show you the basic functionality of this. So we are choosing the tutor lab, and then we're going to choose, let's say, I want to choose the VOCs. So the VOCs are going to be populated here, and I already pre-populated them, but assuming that that was empty, I can come here and populate the way I want. And again, reiterating what I was saying before, we can define the cluster of samples, and for each cluster, we can define a cost. And then we can define the turnaround time and assign the multiplier depending how fast we want those samples back. And also we can define the report level. And once that we do that, once that we save, this information is going to go into the appropriate tables in database. Okay. Now, what do we do with this if we actually want a nice output? We want something that would show us what we have there. Well, we go to reports. So I already created the report. The report is called SPM cost summary. And basically what we need to do, I wanted to put everything what I had there. So I only selected the office hours, the cost, and I selected show advanced cost report, which means that it's going to grab all my SPM task codes and it's going to give me a report. And just clicking the arrow, you can create the report. I already created, and I actually made some notes here, so that would actually help us to understand what they have done. So the report has lots of stuff in it, as usual. We're used to that. However, everything, even if it seems a bit intimidating, actually has meaning. So let's say for the task that we have a discount for mag type with one analyte, obviously because it was just one, we didn't benefit of any discount or anything else. It's just one analyte. So we're going to have one analyte per sample. And that's going to be sample total, and it's going to be $200. And if we remember, the $200 was actually the price for, like, the base price. For the discount mags with mag type with 6 VOCs, we have two types of listing the price. We have per task or per sample. And obviously because we define the task so simple, these prices are going to be the same. So we do have here highlighted in yellow, we have 6 analytes per task. And we already calculated that, and we checked that this was 319555, or we have 6 analytes per sample. And let's do remember that for the task discount with 2 analytes, we had 2 priority metals. If we look here, we have a price of 49. Going back to the database, if we do remember, there were actually 2 prices here, right? So what that means is that those 2 prices added together gave us this price per sample total. So that's basically 2 analytes per that sample, and they lead to that final sample final cost for the sample. So I guess I talked as much as I could about the advanced cost feature. And I would be really happy to take questions if there are any. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Monica. There is one question from Carl, and he asks, what is a cluster? Is this a new concept in SPM or another term for MAG? I think that came up first on slide 3.
Yes. No, it's I guess it's my creativity talking about clusters. No, it's not. I do apologize for that. Cluster is just me organizing my thoughts, thinking that okay, so let's go back here. In my mind, the cluster was basically, and it's not a new word, absolutely. It's basically this number of samples that they group together for a certain price.
Excellent. Okay. I don't see any other hands up, but I will wait a moment to see if anyone else has. Oh, there is another one in here. Sorry. Carl also asks, are the base costs meant to be per analyte or per mag? So for example, the lab may only provide a bulk cost for a suite of metals like the mag and not break it down by individual analyte.
Yeah. Okay, let's go back to what I was trying to show before. Let me see if it's here. So the base 200 applies per mag this year, today here. So as I was saying, if, oh, sorry, how am I doing here? So if I would have, let's say, the mag with 6 analytes, obviously we're going to add. But if I have a mag with just 1 analyte, I'm still going to pay $200. And that was the purpose of the exercise.
Okay, excellent. Thanks everyone for attending, and we hope to see you at our next office hour. And thanks again, Monica.
My pleasure.